Welcome back to the deep dive. This is where we take those really monumental public figures, the complex ones. We gather up all the sources, the good, the bad, the breakthroughs, the controversies, and we piece it all together into structured knowledge just for you.
And today, oh boy, we've got a big one. A really huge figure.
We certainly do. We are diving deep, really deep, into someone who's still, I think, one of the most contradictory, influential, and maybe challenging figures in 20th century entertainment. We're talking about Jerry Lewis.
Jerry Lewis,
Okay.
yeah. Born Joseph Levitch, though even that's debated, as we'll see.
Yeah.
His career span, 7 decades? It's just immense. And trying to sum him up, it's tough.
Right.
Because you have these two massive nicknames he earned. On one hand, the king of comedy, obvious, right? But then also the total filmmaker.
And those two things, chaos and control, they feel almost opposed, don't they?
Exactly. That's the core tension, I think. The duality is really central to understanding him.
So that's our mission today. We need to balance these different sides of him. We'll definitely explore that revolutionary comedy partnership he had with Dean Martin. That's crucial context.
Absolutely. Martin and Lewis. You can't talk about Lewis without Martin.
Then we really have to unpack his role as this innovative director, the auteur, the guy who actually changed how movies got made. And of course, we have to touch on that whole French connection.
Yeah.
Why France saw him as this genius.
Oh, yeah, the Leroy Ducrazy thing. It's fascinating.
And then finally, we have to get into the legacy of his charity work, which is staggering, but also deeply contentious. And we can't shy away from the serious controversies that followed him right up until he died.
You really can't. The scale of his impact, it's just wild when you lay it out. Technologically, artistically, philanthropically. I mean, this is the guy who pioneered instant video playback on set. Video assist.
Which is still used today. They still call it that sometimes, right? Video assist.
Right. Sometimes Jerry's noisy toy, as he called it.
Yeah.
It cemented his ability to have absolute total control over the filmmaking process. But at the same time,
he's running the biggest, most successful TV charity event ever, the MDA Telethon.
raising over $2.6 billion for the Muscular Dystrophy Association. An incredible amount. But then that whole movement faced this intense ethical criticism later on.
From the very people it was supposed to help.
Yeah, from within the disability rights community. It's this career built on, like you said, technical brilliance, comedic anarchy, and this almost obsessive need for control. Fierce control.
That theme control, over the camera, over the narrative, maybe over everything. That feels like the thread we need to follow through this whole deep dive. So let's get into it. Let's unpack this massive, complicated legacy, starting right at the beginning, which, as you hinted, is already kind of complicated.
Yeah, his origins. It's surprising how, for someone so famous, the basic details are a bit hazy. Even his name. We know he was born March 16, 1926, in Newark, New Jersey, into a Jewish family, very much in the entertainment world. His dad, Danny Levitch, used the stage name Danny Lewis. He was a vaudevillian.
And his mom, Rachel, played piano for War Radio, so showbiz was in the environment.
Definitely. But like you said, the records get fuzzy immediately. Lewis himself, in his 1982 autobiography, insisted his birth name was Joseph.
But public records say otherwise.
Yeah, multiple sources. U.S. Census data from 1930, 1940. Even a certified birth certificate lists him as Jerome, even where he was born. Was it Clinton Private Hospital or Newark Beth Israel Hospital? Different sources say different things.
It's almost like the persona, the Jerry Lewis character, was being workshopped from day one, or at least the narrative around him was.
It feels that way, doesn't it? This sort of malleability right from the start. We know he was described as a difficult kid, kind of zany. He dropped out of high school pretty early, 9th or 10th grade.
And his first real comedic act was something called the Record Act.
Yeah, he developed that when he was about 15. He'd basically mime, lip sync and make faces to records playing off stage. Very physical.
That sounds like classic early Lewis, all physical comedy.
Absolutely, it was the foundation. But he struggled at first. There's this story about a gig in Buffalo, a burlesque house. Total bomb. Apparently, he almost gave up.
Really?
Yeah, worked as an usher or a soda jerk. But then an old friend of his dad's, Max Coleman, a veteran comedian, basically told him, take your act to the Catskills.
Ah, the Borscht Belt, the proving ground.
Exactly. That's where he really started honing it. Oh, and he was rejected for World War II service, too. Something about a heart murmur.
Okay, so he's honing his act, and then comes the partnership that changes everything. 1945, he meets Dean Martin.
Right. Lewis is this, chaotic, high-energy teenager. Martin is 8 years older, smooth, cool, relaxed singer. Total opposites.
Very nice.
Completely. They officially debuted as Martin and Lewis on July 25, 1946, Atlantic City, the 500 Club.
Hmm.
And apparently, their first show wasn't great.
It wasn't. I thought they clicked immediately.
Well, the legend goes that Lewis kind of desperately just started messing with Martin's singing, interrupting him, throwing stuff, breaking plates.
Yeah.
Just pure zany antics.
Unscripted chaos.
Totally unscripted. And the audience went nuts.
Yeah.
That became the formula.
So Martin's the suave street man, trying to maintain composure.
While Lewis is just this force of nature, pure anarchy erupting around him. But what made them really different, apparently, was how much they improvised.
Ad-libbing in that era?
Yeah, big time. They'd riff off each other, off the audience. It kept the act fresh, unpredictable. Must have been incredible to see live.
You can imagine. And that energy just exploded, didn't it? Across all media.
Oh, absolutely. Radio The Martin Lewis Show,
Mm-hmm.
massive stage shows, sellouts everywhere. And then TV, the Colgate Comedy Hour. They were rotating hosts. Huge deal.
And they hired good writers, too, like Norman Lear.
Norman Lear, Ed Simmons. Yeah, they knew how to build a team even then. And then came the movies. Paramount signed them up.
Started with those My Friend Irma films.
Ensemble parts, yeah. But quickly moved into their own starring vehicles. 14 buddy comedies for Paramount. Things like Sailor Beware, The Caddy, Hollywood or Bust.
They were massive movie stars. I remember reading about near riots when they appeared in New York.
Colossal fan base. They completely dominated the early 50s entertainment scene.
Yeah.
But, well, you know how these things go. The success itself started to cause friction.
The pressure, the different personalities.
All of that. But there were specific incidents. The sources really point to one in particular that hurt Martin a lot. The 1954 Look magazine cover.
Ah, the infamous photo where they cropped Martin out?
Exactly, just Lewis on the cover. For a publicity shot that originally included both of them, it was a huge public signal, right? That Lewis was seen as the star, the dynamic one. Martin was the straight man, the support.
Ouch. Even if unintentional by the magazine, that sends a message. He's the anchor, not the engine.
Right. And while maybe Lewis needed that anchor, the public, the media, maybe even the studio, they were mesmerized by Lewis's energy. The strain just grew and grew.
Until the split.
Their final nightclub show was July 24th, 1956, at the Copacabana. Exactly 10 years, almost to the day, after their debut. Lewis later said he was just shattered, completely unnerved to be alone, was his phrase.
Understandable. His entire professional identity for a decade was tied to Martin.
Yeah. But then, almost immediately, something unexpected happened. They kind of forced him to prove he could go it alone, and it involved Judy Garland.
Judy Garland. How?
Okay, so Lewis is in Las Vegas right after the split, probably feeling pretty lost. He gets this frantic call from Sid Luft, Garland's husband at the time. Judy was headlining at the Sands, but she got sick. Strep throat. Couldn't perform.
So Luft asks Lewis to fill in.
Begs him, apparently. Lewis hadn't sung solo on stage since he was like 5 years old. He agrees, but figures he'll just do maybe 15 minutes of his usual comedy stuff.
Thought he did more.
He clowned around a bit, yeah. But then, maybe on impulse, maybe just needing to prove something to himself, he decides to sing. Seriously sing. 2 songs.
Which ones?
Rockabye Your Baby with a Dixie melody, a Jolson standard, and Come Rain or Come Shine. Big, dramatic numbers, not comedy songs.
Wow. Talk about putting yourself out there right after the split.
Total leap of faith. And the reaction wasn't just polite applause. It was reportedly explosive. Pandemonium. He apparently walked off stage knowing, okay, I can do this. Alone.
That must have been a huge psychological boost.
Massive. And he ran with it. Immediately self-funded a recording of Rockabye Your Baby. It shot up the charts, hit number 10.
No kidding.
Yep. Then he put out an album, Jerry Lewis Just Sings, hit number 3 on the Billboard charts, sold over 1 million copies. It instantly proved his solo bankability.
So he wasn't just the funny man anymore. He was a recording star, too.
Exactly. The Sands Hotel quickly signed him to a 5-year solo contract. For the same massive salary they'd paid Martin and Lewis together, the solo career was launched. And this set the stage for his next big transformation, becoming the filmmaker.
Right. So he's proven he's a solo star, a recording artist, a huge box office draw on his own.
Right.
That gives him incredible leverage, especially with Paramount.
Huge leverage. He started his solo film career pretty quickly. With The Delicate Delinquent in '57, he often worked with Frank Cashlin as director initially.
Cashlin came from animation, right? That seems like a good fit for Lewis's style.
Perfect fit. Very visual, kinetic, almost cartoonish sensibility. But the real power play came in 1959. Lewis signed this new deal with Paramount. And it wasn't just big money. though it was $10 million for 14 films over 7 years.
$10 million in 1959, that's astronomical.
It really was. But the terms were the revolutionary part. The contract gave him essentially unlimited creative control.
Unlimited, like Final Cut.
Final cut privilege, yeah. Which almost nobody got back then. Directors, maybe Hitchcock sometimes, but performers. Very rare. And even more incredibly, he got the rights to the films back after 30 years.
He got the rights back in the studio system. How did he swing that?
Pure box office clout. He was a guaranteed moneymaker, especially overseas. Paramount knew he'd deliver profits. There's that famous quote from the head of Paramount at the time, Barney Balaban.
What did he say?
Something like, if Jerry wants to burn down the studio, I'll give him the match. It showed total faith in his commercial power. This deal basically made Lewis his own mini studio within Paramount.
The total filmmaker is born right there.
Exactly. And that control immediately led to this burst of innovation. Paramount needed a quick film for the summer of 1960. They rushed him. So Lewis steps up and decides to do it all himself.
This is the Bellboy.
The Bellboy. He produced, directed, co-wrote, and starred. Shot it super fast down at the Fontainebleau Hotel in Miami Beach. Apparently, he was doing his live stage show at night to help finance the filming during the day.
Wow. That's dedication. Or maybe control again.
Probably both. And the Bellboy is really interesting because Lewis's character, Stanley, is almost entirely nonverbal. He just whistles until the very end.
Which makes filming faster, I guess. Less dialogue to worry about.
Exactly. More focus on the visual gags, the physical comedy. But the really groundbreaking thing he did on the Bellboy was technical. This is where video assist comes in.
Okay, let's break that down. We hear the term video assist all the time now in filmmaking, but Lewis pioneered it back then. What exactly was it, and why was it such a big deal?
So imagine you're directing a movie in, say, 1959. You shoot a scene on film. Then what happens?
You wait for the film to be developed.
Right. You send the film cans off to the lab. You wait 24, maybe 48 hours. Then you get the dailies back, the developed footage, and you watch it in a screening room.
And if something's wrong, a performance issue, a technical glitch, maybe you just don't like the shot.
You have to rebuild the set, get the actors back in costume, try to recreate the lighting, everything. Days later. It costs a fortune in time and money.
Okay, I see the problem. So what did Lewis's system do?
He basically rigged up a closed-circuit video camera that was linked to the main film camera. It recorded onto videotape simultaneously. So the second he yelled cut,
He could watch it back. Instantly.
Instantly. On a monitor, right there on set, he called it Jerry's noisy toy. He didn't have to guess if he got the shot. He didn't have to rely solely on the cinematographer's word. He could see it immediately.
That's genius, actually. Total control over the take, right then and there.
Total control.
Yeah.
And massive savings. If a take wasn't right, boom, do it again right away while everything's still set up. It streamlined the whole process. And it totally centered the power with the director, in this case, himself.
He got an award for that, didn't he?
He did. The Golden Light Technical Achievement Award, it recognized him as a genuine technical innovator, not just a comedian. It was a huge deal for his total filmmaker persona.
Another example of that control freak tendency manifesting in a really productive, forward-thinking way. He wasn't just demanding things, he was building the tools to achieve them.
And critics who got what he was doing praised that precision. Some described his visual gags as being choreographed like ballet, having genuine grace and finesse.
He kept pushing the envelope technically too, right? Like with The Ladies' Man.
Oh yeah, The Ladies' Man in '61, that's set. He built this enormous multi-story dollhouse-like structure across 2 huge sound stages. The front wall was cut away so the camera could move around and look into all these different rooms at once, like a giant ant farm.
Incredible, creating a whole world he could completely orchestrate.
Exactly. But I think most people agree his absolute peak as a director and maybe as a performer exploring deeper themes was The Nutty Professor in 1963.
Ah, Professor Julius F. Kelp and Buddy Love.
Right. The meek, awkward, buck-toothed professor who creates a potion that turns him into this smooth, arrogant, obnoxious, but charismatic lounge singer, Buddy Love.
And the speculation has always been, was Buddy Love based on Dean Martin? Or maybe Lewis himself?
It's endlessly debated. Lewis always denied the Martin connection, but the similarities are there. But Buddy Love could also be seen as Lewis's own Ed Unleashed, right? The darkness behind the childlike clown persona. The film really digs into duality, insecurity, the dangers of wanting to be someone else.
It's way more than just a Jekyll and Hyde comedy. It feels personal.
It really does. He used that total control to explore something quite profound psychologically. He doubled down on the multiple roles thing later, too, in The Family Jewels in '65.
where he played 6 uncles and a bodyguard.
Yep, literally playing almost the entire main cast himself. Talk about total control.
So he's making these technically innovative, often psychologically complex films, but the critical reaction, especially in America, wasn't always great, right? That's where the French love Jerry Lewis thing comes from.
Exactly. Mainstream American critics, people like Pauline Kael, were often pretty brutal. They saw it as undisciplined, self-indulgent, just mugging for the camera.
But in France,
In France, it was the complete opposite, especially the highbrow critics, the intellectuals writing for magazines like Cahiers du Cinéma and Positif. They revered him.
they called him Le Roi du Crazy, the king of crazy.
Yeah, but it wasn't just about the craziness. They saw him as a true auteur, a film author. In the same league as directors they championed, like Howard Hawks or Alfred Hitchcock.
Why? What was their argument? Why did they see genius where Americans often saw? Well, just Jerry Lewis being goofy.
They focused on his complete command of the medium. His mise-en-scène, everything that goes into the frame, the composition, the movement, the timing. They saw his character not just as a clown, but as this figure of almost existential innocence, battling a chaotic world through his physical comedy.
So the total control that some Americans saw as ego, the French saw as artistry.
Precisely. They saw the filmmaking itself, the visual language, the rhythm, the way he used his body and the camera as deeply personal and expressive. He wasn't just in the films, he was the films. That auteur theory perspective really clicked with Lewis's approach.
That makes sense. It gave him this intellectual validation, even if folks back home were scratching their heads. But his filmography isn't all comedies. There's one film, a very famous unseen film, The Day the Clown Cried.
Ah, yes. The legendary lost film from 1972. This was a huge departure, a drama.
Set in a Nazi concentration camp.
Yeah. Lewis directed it and starred as Helmut Dork, a washed-up German circus clown who gets arrested for mocking Hitler.
That's you.
In the camp, he ends up. Well, the premise is that he's eventually used by the Nazis to entertain Jewish children and lead them into the gas chambers.
Oh my God. That's incredibly dark territory, especially for 1972.
Extremely dark. One of the earliest attempts by a major American filmmaker to deal directly with the Holocaust in narrative film. But it was never released. Buried.
Why? Was it legal issues or did Lewis himself pull it?
It seems like a bit of both. There were definitely financial disputes and litigation involving the producers after filming, but Lewis himself also became deeply unhappy with it. He later said he was ashamed of the work, not proud of the effort.
So his own standard, his need for control meant if it wasn't perfect, especially on such a sensitive subject, it shouldn't be seen.
That feels very much in line with his character, doesn't it? If he couldn't control the final product to his satisfaction, he'd rather it just disappeared. It remains one of film history's great what-ifs.
After that, he took a long break from filmmaking, didn't he?
For about a decade, yeah. But his return to the screen in 1982 was pretty significant. He starred in Martin Scorsese's The King of Comedy.
Playing Jerry Langford, the famous talk show host, stalked by Robert De Niro's character.
It was brilliant casting. Lewis playing this aloof, controlled, slightly chilly celebrity figure. It felt like he was drawing on his own public persona, maybe even the Buddy Love persona. He got a BAFTA nomination for it.
It's like that role perfectly bridged his filmmaking persona with his other massive public identity, the humanitarian.
Yeah, you can't really separate Lewis the filmmaker or Lewis the comedian from Lewis the humanitarian. It was such a huge part of his public image, almost entirely through his work with the Muscular Dystrophy Association, the MDA.
His involvement was incredibly long-standing and deep. He became their honorary national chairman way back in 1956. But things really ramped up at the telethon.
The Jerry Lewis MDA Labor Day Telethon. It started in late 1966, right? Just one station in New York initially. Yeah, but it grew incredibly fast. Ran for 44 years with him as host. And the numbers are just mind-boggling. Over its run, it raised more than $2.6 billion.
Billion. With a B. That's astronomical for any charity, let alone one focused on a specific group of diseases.
It became this massive cultural event every Labor Day weekend. A fixture. It broke records constantly. First telethon to raise over $1 million back in '66.
Went coast to coast in 1970.
Right. And later, it was even simulcast worldwide on the internet, starting in '98. For years, it held the record for the most money raised in a single event for charity.
And the telethon itself became a stage for, well, for Jerry being Jerry, including that incredibly famous moment in 1976.
The reunion. Yeah, you have to mention that. Frank Sinatra was a guest, and completely unannounced, unrehearsed, he brings out Dean Martin.
On stage, during the live telethon, Lewis hadn't really interacted with him much in 20 years.
And Lewis was visibly stunned, floored. There are pictures, the footage. It's raw emotion. They embraced, tears. Then they started cracking jokes like old times.
Reconciling, basically, in front of millions of people on national television. Only Lewis could orchestrate something like that, even if Sinatra initiated it, using his platform for maximum personal drama alongside the charity.
Absolutely. And his commitment, his fundraising, it got him major recognition. He was nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize. The Film Academy gave him the Jean Hersholt Humanitarian Award in 2009.
And critically, the money did do good, right? The research funded during his time led to actual breakthroughs.
Yes, absolutely. MDA-funded research made huge strides during those decades. They identified the genes responsible for several forms of muscular dystrophy, developed new treatments, improved quality of life. The impact of that $2.6 billion was very real scientifically.
Which makes the controversy around the telethon even more complex, because the criticism wasn't really about the money or the research, it was about how the money was raised, the portrayal.
By the 1990s, you started seeing significant pushback, mainly from disability rights activists, people within the community the telethon was supposed to benefit.
And their argument was?
Their core argument was that the whole approach, the tone, the imagery, it was designed to evoke pity, not empowerment. They pointed to the way that children, often called Jerry's kids, were presented. The focus was often on tragedy, on limitations, on the need for a cure through charity.
This gets into that whole philosophical shift, doesn't it? Moving away from the medical model of disability, seeing the person as broken and needing fixing through pity.
Towards the social model, which says disability is more about societal barriers and the need for inclusion and rights and empowerment. The activists felt Lewis was stuck in that older, pity-based model.
Perpetuating stereotypes, using language that some found demeaning.
That was the accusation, that the telethon, for all the good it did financially, was essentially this massive 21-hour spectacle built on making people feel sorry for disabled individuals rather than respecting their agency or potential.
And Lewis's response, he wasn't one to back down from criticism.
No, he wasn't. He defended his methods very strongly. He famously said something like, "If you don't tug at their heartstrings, then you're on the air for nothing."
Wow. So he basically believed that evoking pity, that emotional manipulation, was necessary to get people to donate. The ends justify the means.
That certainly seems to be his perspective. For him, the fundraising result trumped concerns about representation or empowerment. It was this fundamental clash, pity versus empowerment.
And that clash eventually led to his departure.
It was definitely a major factor. The criticism grew louder. He stopped hosting in 2011, somewhat abruptly. And the MDA itself ultimately discontinued the telethon format altogether in 2015. They cited new realities in TV and fundraising. The era was over.
It's such a complicated legacy there. Billions raised, real research funded, but achieved through methods that became ethically questionable to many.
Okay, shifting gears slightly. What about his other views? Politics, social issues.
Well, early on, he apparently took advice from JFK himself to kind of steer clear of taking strong public political stances.
Really? JFK advised him.
So the story goes, he did support John and Robert Kennedy, and he was definitely on the side of the civil rights movement. There's a notable incident in 1957.
What happened? He was doing a TV special, and some Southern Network affiliates objected to him having his friend Sammy Davis Jr. on as a guest. Interracial friendship on screen was still controversial. Lewis refused to back down. He kept Sammy on the show.
Good for him. Stood his ground there.
Yeah. But later in life, his views seemed to lean more conservative, and he wasn't shy about expressing them, sometimes causing a stir.
Like what?
Well, he spoke out against the Vietnam War back in '71. But then in 2015, he made headlines opposing the U.S. taking in Syrian refugees, citing security concerns. He also praised Ronald Reagan and said Donald Trump would make a good president because he was a good showman.
Okay, so a mix of views over time, but then there were those infamous comments about women in comedy.
Ugh, yes, that was 1998, I believe. In an interview, he just came out and said, "I don't like any female comedians."
Just flat out.
Flat out.
Yeah.
He went on, "A woman doing comedy doesn't offend me but sets me back a bit. I, as a viewer, have trouble with it. I think of her as a producing machine that brings babies in the world."
Wow. That's incredibly misogynistic and just factually wrong, given all the brilliant women in comedy even then.
It caused a huge backlash, understandably. What's weird, though, is that in the same interview, apparently almost immediately after saying that, he started praising specific women comedians. He called Lucille Ball, Carol Burnett, Phyllis Diller, Whoopi Goldberg brilliant.
Wait, really? So he contradicts himself moments later.
Yeah, which makes it even stranger. It's like this ingrained, archaic generalization popped out, but then his actual appreciation for specific talent kicked in. It doesn't excuse the initial comment, obviously, but it adds this layer of confused complexity to it.
You have a very damaging statement that stuck to him. But perhaps the darkest shadow, which emerged more fully after his death, involved allegations of sexual misconduct.
Yes. In 2022, a report came out featuring accounts from several women, former co-stars, alleging serious incidents back in the 1960s, sexual assault, harassment, verbal abuse.
Who came forward?
Actresses like Karen Sharp, Hope Holiday, Anna Maria Alberghetti, Lainey Kazan. They described a pattern of behavior on set.
What kind of behavior?
Karen Sharp alleged Lewis assaulted her during a costume fitting for The Disorderly Orderly. Hope Holiday claimed that during the filming of The Ladies' Man, Lewis cornered her in his dressing room, exposed himself, and masturbated in front of her after she rejected his advances. Others described unwanted sexual propositions, groping, and intensely abusive verbal tirades if they didn't comply.
That's horrific, and it paints a picture of that total filmmaker control potentially spilling over into something much uglier behind the scenes, abusing his power.
It certainly suggests a potential dark side to that absolute authority he wielded on set. These are serious allegations that add another deeply disturbing layer to his legacy, complicating the image of the zany comedian and the dedicated humanitarian even further.
It seems like the physical comedy, the pratfalls, the sheer energy he expended, it took a heavy toll on his body over the years. The sources talk about a lot of chronic health problems.
Oh, definitely. The biggest one, the one that seemed to cause the most long-term suffering, was his back. He had a really bad injury from a fall during a performance.
Was it doing one of his trademark falls?
Yeah, comedic pratfall. Some sources say it happened at the Sands Hotel in Vegas in 1965. Others say it was during an appearance on the Andy Williams Show. Whichever it was, the injury was severe.
And that led to?
Chronic, debilitating pain. And that pain led directly to a very long and serious addiction to the painkiller Percodan. He was reportedly hooked on it for 13 years.
13 years. That must have impacted everything. His work, his mood.
Absolutely. He spoke later about the hell of that addiction. It shows the real physical price he paid for that anything for a laugh style of comedy. He did manage to quit Percodan around 1978 and later had a device, a neurostimulator, implanted to help manage the ongoing back pain.
But the health issues didn't stop there. He had heart problems too, right? Started quite young.
Very young. His first heart attack was in 1960 while filming Cinderfella. He was only 34.
34, wow.
Then he had a second, much more serious one in 1982, which required open-heart double bypass surgery. And there was a third heart attack later, in 2006.
So back pain, addiction, multiple heart attacks, anything else?
Yeah, the list goes on. He battled prostate cancer. He had type 1 diabetes. And later in life, he developed pulmonary fibrosis, a serious lung condition.
And the treatment for that had visible effect.
Yes, the treatment involved high doses of prednisone, a steroid, which caused significant weight gain in the late 90s and early 2000s. People noticed the change in his appearance. It clearly slowed him down.
It sounds like a relentless series of physical struggles, and this decline seemed to happen alongside some major shifts and ultimately rifts in his personal life, too.
Definitely. His first marriage was to Patty Palmer. They married young, back in 1944, and had 6 sons together, 5 biological, 1 adopted.
But that marriage ended.
They divorced in 1983 after nearly 40 years. And Lewis himself was pretty open about the fact that he wasn't faithful during that marriage. He even mentioned alleged affairs with huge names like Marilyn Monroe and Marlene Dietrich.
Okay. Then he remarried.
Yes, in 1983, the same year as the divorce, he married Sandra Sandy Pitnick. They later adopted a daughter, Danielle.
But the relationship with the children from his first marriage, that became strained.
Extremely strained. And this leads to one of the most shocking and, I think, revealing aspects of his final years, his will.
What did it say?
When he died, the will explicitly, by name, disinherited all 6 of his sons from his first marriage and their descendants. His entire estate went to his second wife, Sandy, and their adopted daughter, Danielle.
He completely cut out his sons. After building this global image as a humanitarian, especially for Jerry's kids.
Completely and deliberately cut them out. It was a final, brutal act of control over his legacy and his family narrative, a total rejection.
How did his sons react?
Publicly, his eldest son, Gary Lewis, who had his own music career with Gary Lewis and the Playboys, was scathing. He called his father a mean and evil person, and said Jerry had never shown him or his brothers any real love or care.
That's just heartbreaking. The ultimate paradox, right? The public champion of children privately enacting this complete paternal abandonment.
It's a stark, deeply uncomfortable contradiction. Lewis died on August 20, 2017. He was 91. The cause was end-stage heart disease and peripheral artery disease. He left behind this incredibly complex, polarizing legacy.
Absolutely. So how do we sum it up? Despite everything, his place in comedy history seems secure, right?
Undoubtedly. He's
Yeah.
widely seen as one of the truly great, groundbreaking comedians of the 20th century.
Yeah.
His style, that blend of manic energy, physical genius, and moments of surprising vulnerability, was hugely influential.
You can see echoes of him in so many performers who came later.
For sure. The sources mention people like Steve Martin, Richard Pryor, Andy Kaufman, Paul Rubens, Pee Wee Herman, and definitely Jim Carrey. Carrey was very vocal about Lewis's influence. He wrote something like Lewis would stretch the boundaries of reality so far that it was an act of anarchy. I am because he was. High praise.
And his reputation as a filmmaker, is that finally getting more recognition in the U.S. beyond just the French critics?
I think it is, slowly but surely. Thanks partly to those French critics laying the groundwork, but also respected American critics, like Dave Kerr, calling him one of the great American filmmakers. Richard Brody at The New Yorker called his directing original, inventive, profound. People are reevaluating the films now, seeing the artistry and the control behind the chaos.
And his impact just seeps into pop culture in weird ways, too, like The Simpsons?
Professor Frink. Totally based on Julius Kelp from the Nutty Professor, Lewis even guest voiced Frink's father in one episode.
That's amazing. And SpongeBob. Yeah.
Apparently, yeah.
Yeah.
Stephen Hillenburg, SpongeBob's creator, cited Lewis, particularly his performance as the Bellboy Stanley, as one inspiration for SpongeBob's innocent, optimistic, slightly chaotic personality and even the high-pitched voice.
That's incredible. His reach is just everywhere. He got the official honors, too, of course.
2 stars on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, 1 for movies, 1 for TV. France gave him their highest civilian honor, the Legion of Honor, in 2006. And after he died, the casinos on the Las Vegas Strip dimmed their lights and put up coordinated tributes on their marquees. A fitting Vegas send-off for him.
So when you pull it all together, he's this global icon, a technical pioneer in film, a humanitarian who raised billions and funded life-saving research.
And simultaneously, he's this volatile, autocratic figure, accused of serious abuse, someone who alienated his own children, whose charity work became ethically fraught. It's all part of the same story.
And maybe that central theme we identified, control, is the key. His absolute insistence on being the total filmmaker, having that unlimited creative power.
It seems like it mirrors the way he operated in his personal life, doesn't it? Leading to those demanding, sometimes destructive relationships, and culminating in that final controlling act of the will. The need for control seems absolute, professionally and personally.
Which leaves us with a final thought for you, the listener, to mull over. Considering Jerry Lewis's relentless drive for total control that fueled his technical innovations, his directorial genius, but also seemed to fuel the controversies and the painful end to his family relationships, was that anarchic, unpredictable genius we saw on screen somehow inseparable from this fierce, pervasive need for dominance? Could the revolutionary success and the personal failings be 2 sides of the same coin, both stemming from that absolute need for control?